Well, it's been a well-documented observation that you are not particularly good at formulating the right long-term savings and financial protection strategies over the course of your financial journey. Defaults help remedy this shortcoming by getting professionals to work out the complex modeling required to ensure that members of retirement funds get the strategy that they require to meet their retirement income funding. But joining us to talk about defaults and retirement income is Anne Cabot-Alletzhauser, who she is the head of the Alexander Forbes Research Institute. Anne, lovely to have you on the show. Maybe let's talk about defaults. Exactly what is it, and what are what is the appeal and what are the limitations to this?
I think it's actually an incredibly clever concept. And it's a concept that came up from a bunch of behavioral economists who basically said, what happens when people can't make choices, when they're confounded by decisions? Yeah. And all of us face that. And what do? We do nothing. So our operating mode in confusion is inertia. We do nothing. Okay. So what a default does is that it says, we know you're going to panic. We know you're not going to do, you're going to, stress. Yeah. So what we'll do is that we'll try to understand as much about you as we can, and then based on that, we'll make that decision for you. So all you have to do is come in here, show us who you are, and we will get you into the right space. So it's a fantastic concept.
Yeah. Is this something that's become contentious? Because there's been a bit of contention, regarding the concept of default.
I don't know that the contention is around the default.
Yes.
And please understand what a default is. It's different from being mandated, okay? If you're mandated to do something, you have to do it. The beauty of a default is that if you want to override the decision that the professionals have made for you, you can do it. You can say, okay, actually, I'm perfectly capable of making that decision myself. I will make it. So I think when you're talking about contention, what you're talking about is how people sort of really responded when the pension reform took place and they wanted to try to make provident funds have the same sort of tax considerations and annuitization considerations as pension funds. And that's a mandation that people responded to, not a default. So we have to make a distinction between default and mandation.
So now, as you said, this is when we investors don't know what to do and we go into default. Great. The resistance that we've seen with regards to the government, pension fund and annuitization was
being mandated to go into an annuity at the end of it, but where a default would work in that sort of annuitization process is that it would say, okay, based on your profile, you would probably have this kind of annuity versus that type of annuity. So they're two very different concepts, defaults and mandation.
What do you think the issue is around the annuitization issue, the resistance that we saw?
Look, I don't think annuities are, first of all, does anybody even know what an annuity is?
Let's go back, 101.
And I think what was fascinating to me was the Sanlam study where they came out that said probably 27% even heard what an annuity is. Annuities are also a fantastic idea because an annuity says when you are at a point where you have no income to earn, we will take whatever you've accumulated in your retirement savings, and what we will do is that we will figure out how to dole that out to you so that if you're using regular life annuities, you don't have to worry about what's happening in the markets. We'll make sure that it either certain kinds will keep pace with inflation. Sometimes we'll give you some kinds will give you a bonus. But what it'll do is that it will guarantee you that until you die, you will get that income no matter what's happening out there. But that's scary to people. Yes. Because that's all their savings. And what happens if they need to access those savings? And what happens if they drop dead after the first year? That means all that money has gone to the life company, and your family doesn't get it. So there are scary things about annuities, and there are incredibly comforting things about annuities, because they do take that burden of responsibility, as long as we're talking about a life annuity, off your plate. But there are two types. One is a living, which responds to market movements, and the other is a life, which is the life company comes in and offers you certain types of protections or certain types of guarantees.
And let me find out from you, you said there are some comforts and some things that are not necessarily favourable. Yes.
Yeah.
In your view, what do you think would be the right model, if you could find one, the right solution to this?
I think what we're understanding is that if you can create the right framing for people, if you can give them the right argument, and you can actually show them that what they're weighing up, and help them with that, give them the comfort that they have a decision in there to make. That does one thing for them. If you can introduce flexibility into the equation. So what people are most scared about is what happens if a crisis comes. Do I have a back door that I can take something out somehow? And so it really is a plea to the product providers. Please give us something with flexibility, and please give us something that allows us to withstand crisis if we experience it.
Yes.
But I think where the unions and labor got very agitated is that really goes back to the very distinction between a pension fund, which was all about retirement savings and providing your income afterwards, and a provident fund, which was all more about a long-term savings vehicle that did more than just provide retirement income. And those are two very, very different mindsets. I think that they were trying to say, now you're forcing us into one where the only thing we can solve for is a retirement, and that's a problem. Yeah. But there's an important thing to also know, and again, it was some Sanlam work that came up that said they determined that 30% of people had lost all of their savings within 2 years after retirement. So that's the kind of thing the government's trying to solve for.
And this, I think, boils down to the issue of education, the responsibilities that trustees may have. And unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it at that for today, but you did clarify some very important concepts and given us some things to think about. Thank you so much. That was Anne Cabot-Alletzhauser. She's the head of the Alexander Forbes Research Institute.